fortunate, as you know, to have a nationally recognized young adult author, Walter Dean Myers, very kindly agreeing to appear through the auspices of the Friends of Bellevue Avenue Library, to whom all credit is due. Outstanding organization, truly people who have libraries in their heart. I appreciate it. So I would like to introduce John Downing, Chairman of the Board of the Friends of the Bellevue Avenue Library, and I know John has a few words to say before we proceed with the rest of the program. So again, thank you for coming, and please come back to the library. That's what we're here for. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That's about as close as I'll ever get to Frank Sinatra, I'll tell you, Chairman of the Board. Well, thanks a million, David, and I want to thank, before I go on, Cliff Colwin, one of the library trustees, made a tremendous contribution to make this night possible, and I want to thank him in addition to all his many years of great service as a library trustee. And I want to thank Ray Almack, whom I'll introduce in a second. You know, the founder of the Bellevue Avenue Library, the donor, Andrew Carnegie, has a lot in common with our great speaker, Walter Dean Myers. They both started out with humble beginnings. They both worked their way up to great success in their fields, and they both appreciate and relied upon the value of books and libraries and reading. And so to continue that tradition, the Friends of the Bellevue Avenue Library would just ask you to support them, and of course the Fullerton, this great library, but we're kind of the minor league team. And we want you to do 5 things for us, if you would, in the next year or two to make the next 100 years a great success. Number 1, use that Bellevue Avenue Library. Come on in and enjoy it. And number 2, take out a book or 2 or 3. You'll enjoy the great collection there. Because every time you use it, and every time you take out a book, the statistic is registered, and that helps the town to decide for funding. It's very important that we use our great facility there, that great treasure. Number 3, talk up the Bellevue with your neighbors and friends. Remind them to come in. Remind them that we're going to have our 100th anniversary, and they should all come to the great celebration we're going to have for that. And remind your town council and members and the mayor and the library trustees how much you appreciate the library, because it's really that grassroots support that keeps us going, keeps us strong. Don't forget. Number 4, please volunteer. We are one of the few libraries in the state that has volunteers that assist our outstanding professional librarians, Nola and Dawn, and but they need help. And it's a great way to spend your day helping people out, finding books and things like that in that wonderful room there. You're going to love it. There's several shifts throughout the day, so please ask our executive director, Sarah Brox, about how to sign up and be a volunteer. And last but not least, contribute. The Friends of the Bellevue Avenue Library is a 501c3, so your contributions, whether it's 10, 20, 100, $1,000, $100,000, is all tax deductible. And every penny of it goes to the libraries. Of course, primarily to the Bellevue, but we also give to the foundation, and we were able to buy several computers last year. We had wonderful programs this year for lectures, everything from bird watching to architecture. And we're going to have even greater programming in the future. So please be generous. We have bucks for Bellevue. And enjoy tonight's program with our great author of over 80 books. What a thrill it is to have him. And enjoy the Bellevue Library. And here's Ray Almack. Ray Almack is one of our great residents in town. He's involved in more charities than I can mention. And he really is responsible for bringing Walter here. Thank you, Ray.
And I'd like to welcome everybody here as well. When history is written, every epoch has a voice that is speaking out what happened behind the facts and figures that history records. It's the soul of the era. And so we have some great authors, great artists in our time, such as Hemingway, Fitzgerald, Saul Bellow, Norman Mailer, J.D. Salinger, Harper Lee, Alice Walker, Toni Morrison, among many, many others who have so ably articulated the experience of the last century. And what a wonder it is to have these available, their writings available in our libraries and available to all of us. Walter is that kind of an author. He has articulated the soul of a generation. Our literature says 80 books, but Walter tells me it's 103 books in print, 3 books in the hopper in the process of being published, and 7 under contract. So this is a man who knows how to write a word or two, and 3 or 4 maybe, and say everything that is to be said. I wrote that piece that you have on your seat about Walter, so I'm not going to give you his life history again. But John mentioned that he is David mentioned that he's a nationally known author. He is the winner of the Michael L. Prins Award. He is 5 times the winner of the Coretta Scott King Award. He is the Ann Zarrow Air Aid for Young Adult Literature Award, the Jane Addams Children's Book Award for picture books. He's 3 times finalist for a National Book Award for young people's literature. And finally, the feather in the cap of his career. He is the National Ambassador of Young People's Literature for the Library of Congress. Here is a man who knows the soul of a generation that perhaps escapes us. He is an articulate person who knows something about reading, who knows something about writing, who knows how to capture the history, the feelings, and the pain, the suffering, the joy, and the triumphs of every epoch that we have experienced growing up. I'd like to present Walter Dean Myers.
Hi. Hi. So what I'm going to do is to tell you what I do every day, which is not a lot. No, but and then I'm going to tell you what I'm working on currently, and then I'm going to open the floor for questions. I have a good life. I mean, this is really like so good. You know, you're going to be jealous when I tell you what I do. I get up every morning between 4:30 and 5. I come downstairs. I feed my wife's ugly little cat. And then I make coffee, and I begin my day's work. And my day's work consists of writing 5 pages. That's it. Then I have nothing else to do for the rest of the day. And by this time, it's maybe 8:30 or 9 o'clock. But I'm married, so I can aggravate her on a regular basis. And she's getting a little old in the tooth. She's not here now. So she doesn't take aggravation as well as she used to. But she's still, you know, she's pretty good at it. I do a lot of work in juvenile facilities. I do a lot of work in jails. And I ask myself very often when I go to these places, how do these people get there? What are they missing? What's missing from their lives? And you see a lot of things. You see abuse, a lot of abuse. You see kids who are discouraged, young people who are discouraged, they've given up, they've just given up. And you feel sad for them. I met one young man in a prison. He is just beginning to read. But he's got 25 years to serve. And what's he going to do with that reading? And I thought about these young people. I understood very often that their thinking was flawed. what was wrong with their thinking? Sometimes you see young people committing a crime, and you say to yourself, what were you thinking when you did this crime? You know, in one split second, you've thrown away your entire life. 1 second. Or one guy, he said to me, you know, Mr. Myers, I'm a lot like you. I'm saying, okay, you know, you're a lot like me. And we were raised in a similar neighborhood, we had similar, and I didn't kill 2 people. You know? And I'm going home when I finish this thing. What was the difference? And what I began to see was that the thinking of many of these people is different than I expected it to be. What they were not doing was making rational choices, but what they were simply doing was ordering their imagination for the best possible outcome. Right? Here was his crime. At first I didn't want to ask him about the crimes, but my wife would say, what do you do, what do you do, what do you do? That's the kind of person she is. And what he did was he decided to rob an armored car on 8th Avenue at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, right, on 41st Street in New York City. And he and his friend, there was a getaway car, and they were going to drive 10 blocks into another getaway car. And while they were driving the 10 blocks, they were going to change their jackets. And when they were going to walk by the armed guards, turn quickly and get the drop on these guys. And since they had the drop on the guys, what were the guys going to do? Hand over the money. Well, you know, what he is doing is ordering his thoughts so that everything comes out right. He's not thinking, this is my choice, this is this other person's choice, this might happen, that might happen. So they walk by, they turn, pull out their guns, the guards pull out their guns instinctively with a shootout. The rest of his life is going to be in jail. And this is very discouraging for me because these people very often don't seem like monsters. They don't seem like people who are just, you know, foaming at the mouth. You know, in the movies, you can always tell the bad guy. You know, he's always going, or something to that effect. But you go to the prisons, many of these people are just very, very sad. And I thought about this for a lot, and I saw this ordering of the thoughts instead of thinking. But then one morning, about a year ago, year and a half, I was in my, come downstairs, TV Ugly Cat, had been coffee, and I went to the window, and it was snowing, and a lot of people were going to work. Okay, they were all going to work. How did I get there? Forget about these guys in jail. How did I get to the position of standing in my living room, and I began thinking about it. What got me there? Now, I was born in West Virginia, to the poorest family. That was back before poor became popular. I mean, it was really poor people. My name is Walter Milton Myers. I was raised, I was in West Virginia. My mom died when I was a year and a half, so they taught me, I don't remember. I was given to the Dean family to raise. Why? I don't know. I was a perfectly beautiful child. Must have been could be that. Now, why would they give me away? I didn't understand that. But hey, it happened. And I was brought to Harlem. So I was in Harlem at 2½. My mom was a little German lady, 5'1" maybe. My father was African, my stepfather was African American. My mom read a little bit. What she read was true romance magazines. Read loved true romance magazines. My father never learned to read, never learned to read, never learned to write, which I did not know. He was very good at covering this up. And my mom would talk to me during the day, my new mom. And she would say, well, what shall we wear today when we went to, if we go out for a walk? And it would be my job to walk to the window, look out, and decide what we're going to wear today. Every day, we did this. She would say to me things like, what shall we do? Maybe reach 125th Street. We lived in the middle of Harlem. And I would come up with something. And she would sit there and she would listen to me. Sometimes she would do it, sometimes she wouldn't do it. Sometimes she would do it, sometimes she wouldn't do it. But she gave me that opportunity to think about it. She gave me the opportunity to have a dialogue with her. And I didn't think much of it at the time, because she didn't listen to me all the time. And she should have. We all know that. So I became reading ready at about 3 years old. I was ready to involve myself in this process of reading. Now, my mom read true romance, and I would sit there with her and listen to these stories as she read them. And I would try to get my bosom to heave. I would try to look into someone's eyes and see stars. Never worked for me. But I would watch her read, watch her take that finger, go across the page, stumble across some words, because she only went to the 3rd grade. And I would watch her. And the stories did nothing for me. The stories, I did not like any of her stories. What I liked was mama time. I'm sitting with mama. I'm sharing something with her. I'm sharing something with her. And I look forward to it. Whenever she wasn't working, she worked in factories at times, and she cleaned people's homes at times. Whenever she wasn't working, I would have these afternoons with her. And eventually, I began to recognize some of those words. And by the time I was 4½, Mama could iron, and I could read to her. Was I a particularly bright child? No. Handsome, yes. No. Handsome, yes. Not a particularly bright child. I started school at 6, and I was not a good student because I fought all the time. I fought people, I fought teachers. I would not sit still. I remember my mother being summoned to school and said, Walter won't stay in his seat. He won't keep his mouth shut. You know? And my father, in his wisdom, said, if he needs to be busy, give him something to do. So they had me, while the other kids were learning, I'm cleaning blackboards. But I could learn. I could learn. And then I began to read on my own. I began to read on my own. And in reading on my own, I began to grow as a person. Not so much like this, I was a big kid, but I began to develop as a person. There are things that you may not know about me. Do you remember when David fought Goliath? Say yes.
Yes.
But did you know that if David hadn't killed Goliath, I was his backup? I imagine David fighting Goliath, and I was a little scared because Goliath was so big that I said, I got your back, David. And I lived that story over and over in my life. And when Robin Hood was being chased by the sheriff of Nottingham, remember that? Say yes.
Yes.
I was there. I was there. And I was going through those woods, and I was living. I was developing. I was developing as a person. And later, when James Joyce had his problems with his mother, he wouldn't pray at his mother's deathbed. And his mother begged him, oh, please, son, it was Stephen Daedalus. Oh, please, son, pray with me. And he said, no, I can't pray. I'm going to have to go out. And he went up McDonald Street. Was it O'Connell Street? O'Connell Street. He went up O'Connell Street with the wind and the rain going into his face. A kid next to him, that was me. That was me. And when Henry, in the Red Badge of Courage, was running through the woods, wondering whether there were rebels there, I ran with him. And I went down up the Mississippi with Huck Finn and Nigger Jim. We let Nigger Jim do most of the rowing, because that's the way we were. But I was developing as a person. I was developing into the human being that I am now. I didn't realize it at the time. But books were deepening me. Books were giving me a mind that would live in the present, could live in the past, and could project the future. And when I'm talking to these young people in the prisons, I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing kids who are so flat and so shallow. I'm seeing young people who, when confronted with a choice, cannot make that choice, that are making the choices. My life was not perfect. By the time I was, I think, 14, my uncle was murdered. My father went to this huge depression that lasted for years. We didn't know what he was going to do. My mother, who was this little lady, began reacting to my father, and she began drinking heavily. My family began to fall apart. And I began to fall apart. My grades plummeted. My grades went down. The only thing I had at that point, the only thing that I had, were the books. I stopped going to school. I would spend the entire day in Central Park with Balzac or Andre Gide. I had the books. I would find these books, find the lives in these books, and I could take myself into a different world, not into a world of fantasy, not escapism, but to a world which enlivened me, which I believed in. I remember I found a book called World's Best, and it was an anthology put together by Rich and Holly Burnett of all Nobel Prize winners. And I bought that book when I was 15 years old. God, those were my people. All these authors. These were my people. I dropped out of school at 15. Got caught. Was made a ward at the state. Dropped out at 16. Did not get caught. Joined the Army on my 17th birthday. So what did I have going on? What I had going on was books, reading. I spent 3 years in the Army. My brother came into the Army, and he was killed in Vietnam. First day in country, he was killed. That became part of me. That became part of me. I got out of the Army. What did I have going on? I had no high school diploma. I had no college diploma. I could shoot people. You know, there wasn't a lot of call for that. No. But what I had was an active mind. I had an active mind that could engage anything. I don't believe in differences in intelligence. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't believe that these people over here are more intelligent than these people over here. What I do understand is that there is a legacy. There is a legacy of information, of behavior that we pass down from generation to generation. There was a cartoon in a newspaper, and about raising children, and the cartoonist said that no matter what you try to teach a child, they will behave as the parents behave. They will behave as the parents behave. And I believe that. I believe that. I believe that every person here who gets an education has gotten that momentum from the home. What we learn about life, we learn sitting around the kitchen table. Funniest thing in the world, when you have boys, I have boys, and who didn't want to hear anything I had to say. Nothing. Yes, Dad. Right, Dad. Yes, Dad. Furious me when they look up at the ceiling when you're talking to them. And my boys are bigger than me. One's a little bigger, one's a lot bigger. And when they get to be about 12, they're my height. And my son Christopher, who's 6'6.5", is about yay big, with a 15.5 shoe. 15.5 shoe, huge hands, doesn't play a stickleball. Every time I would yell at him, he would stretch himself up so he'd be a little bit taller than me. You know, I said, "Good for the hell." But eventually, from their mouths, you would hear the same thing that came from your mouth. So they learn it. They absorb it. They absorb it. They become you, for good or for bad. For good or for bad. A year ago, I was approached by the Library of Congress and the Children's Book Council, Every Child a Reader Foundation, and asked, would you consider being our national ambassador for young people's literature? I said, yeah, sounds good. This is my medal. You know, you can touch it if you want to, but if you do touch it, it means we're dating. And I thought that what was going to happen is I was going to ride a big white horse and run around and say to everybody, you know, literacy is wonderful, read a book, everyone's going to cheer. It's not happening. What people are talking about when they talk about literacy is all over the place. Some people are thinking that literacy means reading Tolstoy only, or reading Shakespeare. When I'm talking about literacy, I'm talking about functional literacy. Can you fill out a job application? Can you read well enough to perform a job? One of my sons is an illustrator and writer. The other one was a chaplain in the Air Force. And what he tells me was that there are weapons that soldiers can't use because they don't have the skills to learn to operate them. I find that when I talk to some people about literacy, they think that if a child does not read, it's because he does not have the intellectual capability to learn. It's not what's happening. It's not what's happening. What's happening is that we are getting, in this country, huge pockets of language poverty. You know where language comes from into the house? It comes from the workplace. It comes from the workplace. So when I go home and talk to my kids are gone, talk to my cat, I'm bringing home the language of the workplace. And when I used to work for the Employment Service, and I would talk about jobs, and my kids know a lot about jobs. I'll talk about ball playing, and the kids will learn about that. Whatever your job is, when you go home and you're talking, that doesn't have to be to the child. This is a language that floats around. What are the differences? What are the differences? The differences are staggering. In some households, the vocabulary range is 30 to 40,000 words. 30 to 40,000 words, different words. So within a 1-year period, a child will hear 30 to 40,000 words. In other households, the range might be 150 to 200,000 words. Is that a huge? Kids begin school at the age of 5. Sometimes they have vocabularies of 3,000 to 5,000 words. Well, other kids may have vocabularies of 12,000 to 15,000 words. So the kids are beginning school 18 months to 2 years behind, and only 15 to 17% catch up, ever. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to begin talking with our kids. We need to understand that when there are families in which no one has been working for 15 and 20 years, not only are there economic differences, but there are language difficulties. It's happening in the United States, it's happening in England, it's happening in Australia, Canada, throughout the entire Western world. But then when a kid gets to be 13, you have something else going on. They're discouraged. They're behind and they're discouraged. And they come up with the phrase, I don't care. I don't care. And they do care. But what are they going to, what would you have them say? What would you have them say? I'm too stupid? So I'm rattling cages, beating small people up, trying to preach this thing about literacy. You know, it's going to be a problem that's going to be with us for years and years and years. America has always had the idea that everyone can move up. But you can't move up, you can't read. My father, who could not read or write, always bragged that he could always support his family. If you were a young man today, he could not support his family. He could not support his family. And I'm going to shift into, get off my soapbox, and shift into what I'm working on. Now, I just finished working on World War II. I've done the Vietnam War, and I did the war in Afghanistan, a novel about that. I did not want to write anything more about war at all. But Scholastic gave me a small shopping bag full of money. And I said, well, actually, I do want to write that book. Anytime you go over $150,000, I do it. I can be had. I can be had. I can be had. So I finished that book, which was a good experience for me. Now, I've written so many books. At this point in my life, I had to find something that's different in the book to really go after it. So I began reading all of the German accounts of the war. That was amazing, amazing to understand the differences between the German army and the American army. So that was an interesting book. And I finished that book, and I gave myself 2 days off. I'm a workaholic. I work all the time. I gave myself 2 days off, and I began a new book. And the new book, how I start a book, first thing I do, I come up with a story idea, and I do a small outline, one-page outline. And if it works, I start doing scene-by-scene breakdowns. Every book that I do begins with 30 scenes. 30 scenes work. If you have 30 good scenes, and if it's going to be elementary school book, it can be 30 scenes, each one 3 pages, that's 90 pages, that's fine. If it's going to be for older children, each scene can be 5 pages, 30 times 5, 150. If it's going to be for adults, each scene can be 10 pages. But you have 30 scenes, then you have filler, you have stuff that fills in background material. It's easy. If you don't believe it, drop me a line. And you can get my email from the library. So now, then I began looking for for characters. And I need to have pictures of all my characters. So I have an idea for a book. And it's going to be the future. I began looking for pictures of characters. This is a character, I think he's a singer or something. I don't know what he does. But this is a character, and this is my first character, this is a guy. And I liked him, and I said, I can put him in a book. And another character, and another character. I'm going to pass the book around. This is my sheet. So I get pictures of all my characters, and the pictures go on the wall behind my computer. So every day, when I go to my room to work, I sit down, I look up for all my characters looking at me. Now, what happens with these characters is that I look at them for a while, and then I begin to like some of them, some I don't like, some I learn things about as I write. That's the imagination. That's what I do. This is what you do when you read. You look at the characters in the book, you have opinions about the characters. If the author is telling you what to think, the book is bad. But you should discover the characters. So, here's my characters. And so now I've got my characters. I'll go through the first draft, 30 scenes, which normally takes me a month, right? I got my first draft in a month. Is that good? Say yes. Yes. Yeah, right. And I never get writer's block because I've got the 30 scenes already written down. Yeah? Is this easy? Is this easy? No? It's easier than you think. It's easier than you think. Remember this. Publishers are in the business of publishing books. They want books to publish. They need the product. It's like a pizza, a pizzeria. They need people to eat pizzas. You know, publishers need, so they're waiting for you, for your books. They are waiting anxiously for your books. What you have to simply do is to learn how to complete the book. Now, I'm telling you how to complete the book. You get your pictures, you get your 30 scenes, you do 5 pages a day, or if you're ambitious, a few more, or less. You have your book. Then you send your book off, and the editor says, "Oh, this is wonderful, and we'll pay you whatever you need for the next 2 years to finish it." Right? This is the easiest thing to do. What do I write about? Whatever's happened to me. Whatever happens to me, I will write about it. I was in the military. I wrote Fallen Angels. My son was in the military. If it happens to your son, it happens to you. He was in Iraq. I wrote about that. My father was in World War II. I wrote about that. I wrote about basketball because I played basketball. I write about Harlem all the time. That's where I grew up. I'm writing variations on my life, as did James Joyce. The Hemingway, he made up stuff. He made up stuff because, you know, he was needed a little macho push. You know. But I just saw some of his manuscripts, and he wrote a long yellow pages, and then counted the words, and wrote down the word count on each page. And he wrote, I think, about 520 words a day. Now, I do more than that. No, so I must be much better than that. Anyway, I write poetry. This is the two guys in the back, one's my brother, one is me. I'm the sort of nice-looking guy. Whatever touches my life is what I write about. My sister once said to me, Walter, this is nothing special. This is just what you do. And it is. It is. I would like to encourage all children to write. I was working with Mr. Omac's brother at a school. We did it for 2 years. And we had elementary school kids writing. The first year, I had them sending out manuscripts. The second year, we had 3 kids published. One in Shoe Tree, which is a New Jersey magazine, one in the newspaper, and I forgot who the third one was. I just finished a book with, well, a 14-year-old wrote to me, and he said he wanted to be a writer. And he emailed me, actually, and I said, okay. He also said he played soccer and saxophone. And I said, well, that sounds good. Let's try something. And over the internet, we started writing a book. And it was published last year. And he's now 17. So started at 14. It took us 2 years to get the book. I wrote a chapter, he wrote a chapter, I wrote a chapter. It was a fantastic experience for me. I loved that young man. I finally met him. Obviously, you know, publisher called us in. Young man, you know, it was really wild. He could write about soccer very well. And he could write about hanging out with the guys, but he couldn't write anything about girls. So I said, you know, it's about a boy who's accused of stealing a car and with a girl. So you have to write something about, you know, being with this girl. And so he writes, he puts in the scene, I was in the soda shop, Christy walked in, I said hi, I went to the bathroom. Okay, interesting. So this is what I do. So what I do is I make a living at this. I was very fortunate that my father was correct. I'm a busy person. I have enormous energy, so I write all the time. 105 books. One of the good things about books, they stay in print. Many of them do. For years, I got books older than you people. They still make money. I've got books from 1974, 1975, which bring in thousands of dollars a year. So I was at a juvenile prison, and a kid asked me how much money I made a year. And I said, I make, after taxes, about $400,000, maybe $500,000 a year. He says, what? Will you bail me out? It was fun. It was fun. But you know, when I asked myself again, how did I get to this position? I believe it started with this woman talking to me, and then reading to me, spending the time, allowing me to develop, giving me my father, you know, never read anything, but he would say he read the newspaper. He would come to my house in Jersey City and say, you know, I have this contract to sign for plumbing, but the print's too small, I can't see it. You know? And I would say, how's he going to drive home if he can't see? He can't read. He couldn't read. And it broke my heart. It broke my heart because when he was dying in East Orange, Veterans Hospital, I wanted him to give me a final approval. I wanted him to say that what I did, he loved. Never did. I brought him a book in the hospital, put it down, broke my heart. It wasn't until I went to his house after he had died, going through his papers, and I saw he was signing his name. He was writing X's for his name. He couldn't read. I wish I had known that when he was alive. Okay. What questions would you like to ask me about anything? About the wife, the cat?
I don't read a lot, but I know it's very important. What are some of the things that I can do to get myself? I'm not a novelist. I don't like novels. I like self-help, health books.
Right.
Reading people bios, something like that. What are some of the things that I can do to get myself to be able to be more interested and read? I read the newspaper every day.
Okay, you're in the right place, because what you can do is to talk to a librarian and have them show you the kinds of books. You tell them what you're interested in, and they have books on that subject that they can put their fingers on. And you know, what I do, I force myself. And I read for pleasure, I read for research, but I force myself to read in the mornings. So I get up and I'll say, I'll read 30 minutes in the morning, and that's going to be, you know, I even read to my stupid cat. You know, I'll read to my cat. But you know, I'll read, have no shame about reading self-help books, and I don't mind reading trash. I don't care, you know, but I enjoy reading, and I know in my father's day, reading was optional, because if you had a strong back and a willing personality, you can make a living. Today, that same strong back and willing personality will not cut it. Another thing, another factor, that I remember I was on a job for 3 years and I quit the job. My father was on the same job for 37 and a half years. Jobs don't last that long anymore. Jobs don't last that long. You can be a computer repairman today, and next year, you know, they may be obsolete. You know? When I worked for the New York State, we trained young inner city girls to be data input typists. Before the second class was through, somebody had invented the floppy disk, and we didn't need those people. No. They tried to train a whole bunch of young people to become secretaries. People rarely need secretaries now. Things are changing so quickly, you know. So I went out and bought Dragon. Dragon is a speech recognition thing where you can talk into a microphone and the stupid thing types. You know? What? No, it's amazing. It's amazing. You know? So when my carpal tunnel syndrome gets too bad, I just pick up the microphone.
I would like to share the fact that when you look at an experience, I grew up in Washington, D.C., and during the time that it was a segregated system, and my school would receive the books, the used books from the white system, the
right.
white schools, and half of the stories would be missing, and lots of the pages would be missing. And as I've gotten older, I realized that it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because I filled in the stories, the chapters that were missing, with my imagination.
Right.
And we would have the beginning, or we'd have the title of the book, but then you'd have 5 and 6 chapters missing. And I used to sit and make up the story so that it would match the ending.
Right.
And my stories were better than but what I found was that as I became older, I had such a thirst for reading and writing, and I went into education, taught in the district school system, and went into working with aphasic children. I think it's a joke in a way, because I worked with aphasic children who absolutely just imitated what I did in the classroom with the regular children. We merged those children.
Right.
Became a teacher of the deaf-blind, and then got so frustrated with the fact that we don't push our children to read and to learn and to use their imagination, that I did something very illegal, and that was take the children after school, and we went all around the city getting the merchants to want to teach or have the children to shadow them. It became so popular that I got into deep trouble, in that it had no sanction for the school system, no insurance, no nothing, and here I was doing it as a volunteer. Those children, those 12 children, read, they used Braille, they used large print and whatever, but they were absolutely thirsty for reading and writing, surely because we were out in the street. One merchant happened to have been a banker, the manager of a bank, and he called the school system superintendent and congratulated the superintendent on this marvelous, innovative thing. The superintendent didn't know anything about it, nor did she know anything about this idiot. I ended up being called into the superintendent's office, and she sat me at the end of the long table, and she said, "You're an idiot. What is your problem? What is it that you want to do?" And I said, I want to see the children who have little vision, no vision, can't hear. I want to see them dying of thirst to read, to know,
Well, if you
to learn.
Well, the point of the thing is that if you give them value, I don't think that children are so thirsty for learning, but if they find value in it, So when I find that with my kids, when they were small, I gave them value, and what would happen is because I valued reading, then they valued reading. The mom, we would buy not class sets, but 2 copies or 3 copies of a novel, so that all of us read the same book, and so we could discuss it. And of course, what happened with the boys, especially, to give them an opportunity to discuss something and move away from that parent-child thing, and let them discuss it with you as just 2 brains, and that has a value to them, and they will pursue that. So I just felt that, like with Christopher, especially, he wanted to watch television on Saturday mornings. I would make him turn off, just not all the programs, but for 30 minutes, I would make him turn off the sound. And you can watch the television, and then you write down what they're saying. And that gave him value. That gave him value. And if you give a child value, then they will follow you.
It was really great to hear your presentation. I was curious, you gave a very pragmatic approach to writing, which I thought was great because it really showed that, it's kind of shrouded in such mystery to write a book, and you could lay it out step by step. But I was curious how you might connect, sort of in an idealistic way, maybe as you're writing, what you see in the juvenile detention centers and what you described of those kids and those young men that you see there. And then when you're writing, are you aspiring at all to reach them, or is there a way that when you're involved in your artistic process that you see trying to make
I just finished a book about two young men. One was a runner, a long distance. He actually did 1,500 and 3,000 meters, and the other man was an aspiring writer. And they recognized in each other that they were both doing something, and they were being picked on. And so the idea of the book was that if you're doing something, people will try to stop you. And they will try to stop you if you are a good student, if you are a good athlete, if you are a good musician, they will try to stop you. And what you have to understand is, why are they trying to stop you? Because they want you in their category. They want you. And so I'm trying to give kids hope. I'm trying to give kids this feeling that you have to protect who you are, not just physically, by fighting back. You have to protect your abilities and your talent. If you have a good GPA, you have to protect that, because there are going to be people who will want to knock that down. People will want to bring you down to their level. You know, I have Christopher. He couldn't play any ball. 6 ball. But he could draw. He could draw very well. And people would denigrate his drawing. And they would say, oh, you're drawing, you're nothing. But I protected, made him protect that. And say, no, this is something, this is a talent. Now he's a commercial artist. And he teaches art. He taught art in America, Boston School of Design, the Sudan. So every time I write something, I think about how can a child use this? How can a child use this? What can a child take from this book that's going to strengthen them for the next day? And you know, I was at a trial, and I was watching a young man on trial for, I think it was breaking and entering. And I said to the defense counselor during a break, it must be very difficult to defend these young men, because you don't have very many resources, you know, to get evidence and what have you. And he said something to me that really stuck with me. He says, I don't need the money to gather evidence. That's not my biggest need. My biggest need is to humanize this young man in the eyes of the jury. To humanize this young man in the eyes of the jury. And this is what I think that what we need to do. We need to take each young person and humanize them and say, you are a human being, and that has value. That has value, that has meaning, and you cannot let anyone take that away from you. Don't let them make you into a gangbanger and say that's your value. Don't let them make you into a rapper and say that's your value. You as a human being, that's your value. And I try to do this with every single book that I do.
Well, I enjoyed your presentation. And I want to write, what can I do to get myself motivated? Because I get motivated. Should I get up like you, 4:30, feed the cat? I got a cat.
They come to my house, feed my cat. Well, the thing that I did for years was to look for inspiration, and it didn't come. You know, and so what I needed to do was to look at this and say, I need a method of outlining the story. If you were going to be a plumber, you wouldn't say, wait for inspiration to be a plumber. No, you would learn the business. That's what you have to do. And I can show you, when that thing comes around, there's a scene-by-scene breakdown of something in there. And take a look at that. Take a look at that. That's how I do, And I would spend a month on that scene-by-scene breakdown, thinking about that story, looking at that story. And once I have that scene-by-scene breakdown, I know this. I'll finish the book. Good, bad, or indifferent, I'll finish it. And you don't have to write 10 pages a day. You can write 2 pages a day.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking today. I'm a children's librarian here, and the whole speaking about reading to your child and how important that is, it's not only increases their vocabulary, but the relationship and everything you've been saying. So I'm singing your song like every day with story times and stuff. I was just curious, when you were a child, were there libraries that you visited? Did somebody at a library touch you, or did you make use of the libraries in the city?
Yeah, the George Bruce branch of the public library. I use that. When I found out that you could go there and take books out for free, I couldn't believe it. This is how old I am. What they would do is to put a stamp. We had a little grid, and they would put, took out 4 books, they would put 4 little stamps, you had to bring 4 books back. And they would stamp them, And I would fill up my, the librarians were old and ugly, but, but I still went, but I had to take a brown paper bag, to put the books in a brown paper bag and sneak them past the guys, because I would have to fight, yeah, I love that library. That library did wonders for me.
Hi, I work at Whitney Houston Academy in East Orange, and we started off this year reading your book, 145th Street. And in the beginning, I wasn't interested in Walter D. Myers, but as we read the book and began to get deeply involved in it, the kids said, well, let's find out who this guy is. And we started to look you up on the internet. And then we started to stalk you on the internet and find out where where you lived. And we found out you were in Jersey City. And I'm from Jersey City. So I said, well, I'm gonna pass by this house and see if he's there. Because the kids are very interested in seeing you or meeting you. So I came tonight to get a picture of you so that I could take back to them and say, well, look who I found. So, I
one
love to get a picture.
One of the things that I usually write about Harlem, because I want to write about a neighborhood in which the people are very often dehumanized.
Yes.
And they're depicted as being other. And that bothered me. When I was a kid, I spoke to James Baldwin about this. When I was a kid, I loved reading, but I never found myself in books. I never found poor people in books, except for Dickens. So I never found anything even vaguely about me until I found, I sort of like James D. Farrell, Dutch Lanigan, but until I read Baldwin. And Baldwin, Sonny's Blues. And I told Baldwin that. And Baldwin said he experienced the same thing. But what he did was, and this was in the 50s, he went to Europe.
Yeah.
As did Richard Wright, as did so many black intellectuals, because they could not find themselves, and they wanted to find themselves. The same thing is happening with adults at this point. And all kids understand that books transmit values. If you can't find yourself in those books, it says on some level that you have no value.
Now we're doing a play with each one of the stories. The kids are writing plays now. They're writing little excerpts, and we're going to perform them on stage, just with our group. But each group has their own play. One's doing Monkey Man, the other one is doing The Fighter.
Okay.
You know.
Good. Good.
I just wanted to ask, because it was so interesting when you were talking about the fact that you didn't graduate from high school, you didn't graduate from college. And I'm just wondering, how did you become a writer? What happened after, you know, the...
Oh, okay, so I got out of the Army, and I was working on a construction job one day, and during my lunch break, I was drinking beer, sitting on the curb, and some girls came by, and one of the guys made a very intelligent remark to them, something like, "Woo-wee, mama." No. And I said, "I've got to be able to do something important than this." And a teacher in my high school who understood, she knew that I was going to drop out. She said, "Walter, you write well, don't give that up." And so I said, I wasn't expecting to be published. I didn't care about that. I just wanted to think of myself in a way other than being that. And I began to do it, to write. And sending stuff out, sent it out, and came back. Eventually recorded. How old was I when I wrote my first book? How old are you? I think I was about 9. So, my first book, I think I was about 28. There's time for one more question.
Hi, I met you earlier today. When writing during the Harlem Renaissance, did you find that more interested then as compared to writing stuff now? Because now you have more, but then you just like it's like more writing. Did you write that period of time when you was writing or changed more than that?
Well, I didn't, Baldwin was before me. I met Baldwin later on. Langston Hughes used to come to my church when I was a kid. What you had during that period of time were more outlets. Now you don't have, most magazines now don't publish fiction. There are very few serious magazines. You have television, but that's hard to break into. When I was young, which was about 3 years ago, I wrote for Argosy, Alfred Hitchcock's Mystery Magazine, Quarterlies. I wrote for everybody and everything. They don't have those magazines anymore. Even the Johnson publications, Nickel Digest and Life World, they don't have those magazines. They don't publish fiction anymore. And why? Because I think it's cheaper to do something else. They don't understand the power of fiction. Thank you. It's been a very good.
Friends of the Bellevue Avenue Library, we would like to give you this little memento from us. We have been so fortunate to have this guest of honor.
Yes.
He has given us all food for thought as a parent, teacher, future writer of all ages. You know, here we are. We can go away on this lovely evening, an autumn evening, in our library, one of 2. and say that, hey, I've been there and I've listened to Walter D. Myers. Listen. And it's really funny because we do believe Walter. It's the Walter event. In the meantime, we have books back there. The holidays are coming. Do you have someone you want to give a book to? I know I do. And so head on back. There are books. There's information about the Bellevue. You can sign up for our emails. And Walter, Mr. Myers said, excuse me, said that he'd be willing to order books. So please, thank you for coming and supporting this community event.